Educating Geeks, the podcast where friends help friends discover new passions. I'm geek host Bree, and in this studio today we also have
Alice,
Cassie,
and Megan.
And today we are educating Cassie on RoboCop 1 and 2. So, Cassie, these are very famous 1980s action movies that you have not seen. Why haven't you seen them up until this point?
I associated them with, like, Arnold Schwarzenegger's bout of 9,000 different movies of the same persuasion, if not robot-oriented, then at least military-oriented.
So you're talking like Terminator?
I've seen Terminator a couple times. I'm not someone who's seen the sequels. Or I know.
Terminator 2 is so good.
Oh my gosh, and you have the saddest face. Like the most earnest face
It's
about
one
it.
of my favorite movies.
It's the one worth watching.
It is, yeah, it really
Yeah,
is. The
so-
first one's
The
really
original.
good, too.
And the original was fine.
So RoboCop you didn't watch?
I
because
just associated it with that
could see
era of filmmaking of the same type. And I definitely knew about it. I definitely had heard about RoboCop and its fame, but
Because it came out in 87.
and then the second one came out in 1990.
In 1990, very quick.
But it was definitely, well, yeah. And I guess, I mean, it made a crap ton of money, the first movie did, compared to how much they spent on it. So
I
Yes.
didn't even check the box office.
I
mojo.
did. So RoboCop was domestic total gross 53,424 mil, obviously. And then RoboCop 2, which we'll get to, right, which is shocking, was 45,006,081, right? So it still made
It didn't do
good
as
amount
good,
of money.
but it still made a
yeah.
lot.
The thing that made the first one so impressive, though, is I believe I read that it only cost $13 million to produce. So that's not bad. I mean, they quadrupled their investment there.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's just domestically.
So how about you, Alice? What's your experience?
I saw it in the movie theater, so that was 3 years after I graduated from high school. So that was like full on, of course we're going to go and see it in the movie theater. And I remember at the time liking it, enjoying it for its, campy, over-the-top, sci-fi-ishness of the late 80s. Of course, going back and watching it now, which I have seen it several times, but it's not one of those films like Big Trouble in Little China or Star Wars that I've seen just so many times it's not even funny. I've only really seen this film a handful of times. So it was interesting. We'll obviously get into that later, looking at it with an older eye, not actually being in the 80s, but looking back on the 80s, totally different perspective.
Well, I saw RoboCop the first time, actually I think just this last year. And I hadn't seen the second one until we prepared for the podcast.
Yeah, I had never watched the second one.
And I was in school when the second one came out in the night. Well, I would have been in school for both of them. But I remember when the second one came out because all the kids in the school were going to see it. And we were all definitely way too young to be watching
Yeah, I was going to say, it's R-rated.
You would have been like 4.
We were all definitely way too young.
Are you the one who has the really protective parents who didn't watch
Yeah,
Buffy?
I definitely didn't see it. But there were a lot of kids at school, the boys in particular, that were going to see RoboCop, and they all really loved it. But it just seemed kind of cheesy and campy to me, and it wasn't in my wheelhouse at the time. It wasn't the kind of thing that I was interested in seeing. But Matt showed it to me this last year, and I thought it was awesome. Matt and I have been watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and if you're not watching it, you're missing out because it's hilarious. And there's a scene where they're all talking about what's your favorite cop movie. And one of the police officers says RoboCop because it's got everything I like. Gratuitous violence.
The comma that's really in ellipses.
Yes. And I kind of agree with her because unfortunately that's what I love about the movie.
Number 2 is much worse, and I did not know that there is a director's cut of RoboCop. I just found that out.
Are you serious?
I think
just a couple of days ago when I was Facebooking with a friend of mine, and it's apparently much gorier than the original cut.
I don't know which version I've watched. Like, watching the one that I've seen, because I've seen the same version twice, and I don't know if it's the original or if it's the director's cut. I almost wonder if it is the director's cut.
Yeah,
for
I
me,
have no
idea.
Very sure it's the original.
Yeah, I saw the theatrical release for sure.
I
How about
didn't
you,
watch
Bree?
it until like college, I'd say. My dad would make reference to it when I was younger. And of course, I would have no idea what he was talking about. And in college, my old high school friends would get together basically on every break and watch a ton of movies. And for some reason, they always wanted to watch all 3 RoboCop movies. My friends love to riff on movies, so they'd riff on it all the time. So it was fun, but I still loathe the 3rd movie.
I'm not surprised, given the way it went down.
The steady decline.
And for me, it didn't start at a very high bar to begin with. So.
The only reason I was considering watching the 3rd movie was because I think Lewis is awesome, and I knew that she was in the 3rd movie. So I was like, well, I could get some more Lewis in if I watch the 3rd movie. And then I looked at the Rotten Tomatoes rating of 11, and I was like, yeah, maybe I'm not going to spend my time watching
When I looked at it, it was even lower. That was 3.
3.
Was it really?
Yeah, 3% is what I like.
That is really bad.
That's really bad.
That's a really bad rating.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
So it's the overall impression that you got from the RoboCop movies. Like, how do you feel about them in general?
And can you talk about them in the same light? Because for you, they might be equally as bad, or do you have to talk about one and then talk about the other?
I have to say, with all due respect... With all due respect to everyone involved in that franchise, anyone who loves that
She's
show.
so respectful.
I cannot...
Just trash it.
I cannot ever endorse anyone watching that movie. Or the other one.
Across the board.
Across the board, there are too many amazing movies out there that I have not even seen, that if you have to choose, I haven't seen a movie.
or something else.
Apparently, I should have watched Terminator 2.
Yes.
But,
we're going to have to put that at the top of the list.
And there were obviously, like you said, there's some funny parts, some amusing, intentionally, whatever, good parts. RoboCop 1 was definitely better.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I can't even talk about them in the same category.
Absolutely. They're absolutely separate. But as a franchise, I just could not believe how it exploded. I guess I can see how it exploded after the first one to some degree, 87, whatever. But I was reading it that there were television series and
there was a
mini-series and
which I
comic books, which might be why Frank Miller got involved. I don't know. It was crazy. Yeah. I don't understand.
And there's since there were so many series, it does that whole Star Wars thing where the timeline kind of gets confused and you don't really know what's canon.
Oh my gosh, really?
Oh
you
no!
Don't know. You're not really sure what year everything's taking place in, because some people are like, it's 97, it's 2043.
What? That's a huge gap.
That's a huge gap.
That's a big difference.
Yeah. Because I don't find that the first one so, especially looking back on it now. When I watched it originally, I probably, it is 1987, and I'm in the moment. These are the films that I have available to me. We haven't had these other types of movies out, so this is very much in the style of the day, right? Mm-hmm. Looking back on it now, it's like Watchmen for me. It's very much about the 80s. Mm-hmm. It's about Reaganomics. It's about the nuclear scare. It's very much tied to that era. And what I think is interesting
in the 80s when they were
exactly
having financial problems.
Mm-hmm. And it's
every urban city. Yeah.
It's a non-American director. So I think it's interesting to have this European view of America of the 80s and sort of poking fun at it. For me, it's a social commentary film, looking at it now. I obviously didn't have that kind of insight when I was, 20. But looking on it back now, that's totally how I view it. And so I don't find it as horrible. And then you get to RoboCop 2, and everything that was interestingly satirical, they just make it ridiculous.
Yeah.
With Nuke, you mean, and everything else?
Just every
because they still
bit
tried to be politically...
They did, but everything that kind of works for me in RoboCop as a political commentary is just made ridiculous.
It's pushed so far to the extreme.
Exactly.
No, I agree.
It's like they went from satire to kind of taking it seriously, we're going to do that with these characters.
Yeah. So the bit at the beginning, which is a commentary on corporate corruption, the model comes in and he shoots the guy, and everybody's just like, oh, well, that just cost us some money. We don't really care about the guy. It's just a cost. And then they switch that to the scene in RoboCop 2 where they play the same scene 3 times in a row, just making it completely ridiculous every single time.
The opening sequence is a great example of that, where crime in Detroit is so bad that the first guy gets robbed, and then that same money goes through the hands of like 7 different criminals in a 5-minute period, because Detroit is so crime riddled that no one can hold on to like $20 for more than 5 minutes. Like, that's just it's too far.
Yeah.
It's also kind of messed up because like Detroit really was having like problems.
Yeah.
The crazy thing of it is that RoboCop though is like a
he's a hero.
It's like a hero, and they're like want to put up a statue of RoboCop in the city of Detroit, which I just find fascinating.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's like, is it Philadelphia with Rocky, where it's just like anything that brought attention to their city, they were happy to.
Well, and the one positive thing that I think comes out of it is that it does, even though there's all of the things with the cops going on strike and them being privatized, which is like a whole other commentary that's so interesting to me. But the cops of Detroit are given a positive outlook, I think, overall. And I think they should be. And I think that's why RoboCop has become a hero to Detroit, because he represents the cops of Detroit who do have a really tough job that they're facing, as all cops do. But when you're in a city that's that's having as many problems as Detroit was, to give those people a little bit of recognition, I think, is really important. Yeah. And that's, even though I hate the second movie, the scene where the cops rally to RoboCop after he's electrocuted himself, I thought that was a brilliant scene. That was the best scene in the whole movie, and I wanted the whole movie to be like that.
Oh, and it's so not like that.
And it's so not like that.
It's not.
Like, they even took Omni-Consumer was kind of... Like, they had their bad eggs, and they had their bad ideas, but they weren't super evil. And then in the second movie, they're just super evil.
Yeah. And all of the interesting little bits, like Lisa Gibbons, delivering the news, and then the nuke game, and all the little cuts that they do is, that structural tool that they use. Again, just becomes ridiculous in RoboCop 2. And again, they just push it way too far.
At first, it was interesting. In the first one, I was like, that's an interesting take on, portraying news. And in the first one, it was exposition in many ways. All those commercials and everything was creating this world. And then, in the second one, it was just kind of outrageous.
Yeah.
Everything was outrageous.
In RoboCop, it got 2 Academy Award nominations.
Yeah, for special effects, and I can't remember the other one.
I'm going to need you...
For editing and sound, actually.
Editing and sound.
Okay, I guess I can't be offended by that. I was about to get really offended.
It did have very good editing and very good sound.
It had good job with those two, but oh my gosh, that movie.
Oh my gosh.
It was really violent.
Yeah.
Like, I did not, and knowing, I didn't know people, or, friends who went to see the movie quite as young,
They were, the people I knew were definitely way too young to be seeing that
What
movie.
is R-rated? I mean, it's R-rated.
But I remember,
and appropriately so.
I remember teenagers, preteens, that being a thing. And then I see it, and I'm like, people are getting obliterated.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and it had originally been rated X, from what I understand, and that's the quote unquote director's cut. They toned it down. It got rated X for violence, which at the time had not ever really happened. Like, usually things were getting X ratings for being sexually explicit, and this was the first thing that was like, it's too violent, it's getting an X rating.
And I completely understand. I still think it's way too violent.
It's pretty violent. Yeah.
Like, the second movie...
Way too violent compared to the films of today?
Horrific.
Well, that's
the second movie...
The Walking Dead on freaking television. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I mean...
I just saw a TV show with, like, things coming out of people's eyes. I mean, it's... this is violent?
Well, the problem is that, the MPAA has completely...
I've seen PG-13 films that are as violent as RoboCop, for heaven's sake.
Absolutely. But that's like some sort of standard that's happened, and there's been some talk about that. Why movies that have too much sex, quote unquote, are horrible, and the MPAA races to want to rate them as NC-17. But movies with tremendous amounts of violence can often get PG-13. It's a weird thing that's happened over the last 20 years.
Well, and this is the first American film that Paul Verhoeven directed. So he's been coming to Hollywood, and it's like, I have to shoot. So, which I think is also an interesting commentary, right? I have to shoot this American style film. What are American films about? Yeah. Oh, they're about violence.
Yeah, he comes from a relatively non-violent region of Europe, right?
Yeah, and his other films, For his European films aren't like that.
I haven't ever seen any of his European films, but I have liked almost everything that I've seen that he's done, which is RoboCop, Total Recall, Basic. I actually haven't seen Basic Instinct.
Did he really do Starship Troopers? I was going to bring up Starship Troopers because they use that same type of...
it's that same social commentary.
Same social commentary, same way of presenting the news and commercials and stuff like that. But I think it works. It works so well. RoboCop is like a rough draft of how Starship Troopers.
Some of that social commentary of Starship Troopers, though, comes from the book.
It does.
It's not just the writers. That's the book.
But like
the writer of the book.
The structure that they use to get the social commentary across is very similar.
Yeah, and I hadn't thought about that, but I saw Starship Troopers in the theater. I love that movie.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who that's in their top 5.
Yeah,
it's interesting that he directed Basic Instinct and Showgirls.
I was going to bring up Showgirls.
I know, Showgirls. What an interesting film for him to have directed.
I did like that they, one thing that they did in both films, the use of his point of view once he's being reconstructed.
I know, isn't that cool?
That's a really cool visual motif that they did. And they followed it in the second. I thought it was interesting. Hobb essentially replaced Morton. If you look at when you put the two together of him kind of being destroyed and resurrected from that point of view, he's surrounded by essentially people who are taking him apart, and he's got the main villain who's basically like ordering people around. And so that was an interesting visual aspect that they did.
Out of the two films, which one had your favorite villains in it?
For me, it's the guy who pushes forth the RoboCop program. He's my favorite villain. So not the guy who ends up killing him. So the owner of Omnicorp, but the guy who runs the RoboCop program. And Hobbs just ridiculous, so I can't pick Hobb. And then Tom Noonan with that ridiculous sideways nose ring. I can't pick him.
So you're talking about Morton.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Morton's a good traditional villain.
Yeah, I like Morton.
Kane, I thought, was ridiculous.
Ridiculous. That's Tom Noonan. That's Tom Noonan with that ridiculous thigh.
Yeah,
and
that was...
Talk about a Jesus complex. He's the one, there's all that religious stuff. I
bizarro.
mean, it was ridiculous.
I did think of RoboCop 2, that Hobb, that kid, was a non-traditional villain. An interesting non-traditional villain.
I just found him annoying.
I had a lot of problems with him.
Really?
Because in one scene I would think, man, this kid actor is awesome, and he's really owning this character, and he's doing a great job, and this character is like, I think the kid was too extreme for me. It was just too extreme.
He was pretty dang extreme.
I mean, he was really
ridiculous
smart.
To me.
It was ridiculous. And I'm sure somewhere there's probably a kid that is that messed up, evil, conniving, but I just had a really
dressed
hard
in an
time.
Izod, whatever.
I know, right?
I mean, it's really. I kept looking at the. I would be
wears
like,
a pinky
why
ring.
is he like this swearing Izod? I mean, was it Family Ties where they're like, oh, it's going to be? I mean, the whole time I'm just thinking, like, what the hell was Frank Miller thinking? I mean, he's striking as like every guy who goes into their first college creative writing class, and they're like, I'm going to make it edgy. I know what? I'm going to have a kid swear. I'm going to, have him hang out with whores and take drugs, and that's going to make it good and edgy.
I took a lot of classes with those guys.
I know, right? I mean, I kept like, he's in an Izod and she's dressed like Vanity 6. What the hell is going on here?
Right.
It was just stupid. Stupid.
I wasn't that offended by it. I mean, he was a messed up kid.
We were just not given any motivation for him. Like, there was no motivation for him doing these things.
I
played it well, but
yeah.
we did.
I know.
And it took so long for them to show us that he was ultimately being manipulated by Kane. But you didn't get any of that until the vivisection scene, which was just horrific.
Right.
But
it's forced him to watch.
Yeah, but I mean, up until then, he seemed like he was just on his own. Right?
Well, and did anyone have sympathy for him when he dies?
No. And the whole time I was watching the movie, I was like, okay, there's no way that this kid is going to survive this movie. Like, immediately, I knew that there's no way he is going to make it. But I was like, how are they going to kill this child in this movie? Because RoboCop can't kill him, so someone else has to kill him. So the whole time I was just waiting for it to happen.
Really? I didn't expect him to die.
Oh, I knew.
That was the other, the whole, not only is Hob going to be this, swearing whatever kid, then we're going to have the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts robbing the thing. It's
team.
just,
I love that.
softball team.
I
sorry.
love that, yeah.
All of it was just so cheap writing to me, playing for the...
So then what was your favorite bit and your least favorite bit?
Favorite bit.
So my favorite bit, and it's from RoboCop, and it's ridiculous, I think it's from RoboCop. Is it from It's from RoboCop, where it's trying to go down the stairs.
Yeah.
And it's going, his little toes.
Oh my god.
Oh, I love that scene so much. I love
What was
it.
it called again? The ED-209.
Oh.
It's so poorly designed.
Yeah.
So
I just
funny.
loved it with its little toes.
That was funny. Whether it was
it.
intentionally or not. I can only assume it was intentional.
Yeah.
But it was funny.
I have a hard time picking my favorite scene. I do really like the scene from 2 that I've already talked about with the cops coming to RoboCop's aid. But the first one is definitely my favorite. I think my favorite from that is when Morton and Jones are in the men's room in the OCP building, and he's calling and Morton calls Jones a pussy without knowing that he's there, and so they're getting in each other's faces, and when they're nose to nose, I wrote, there's so much no homo going on in this scene. I was
and then
waiting for them to kiss.
He touches the side of his face.
Caresses him.
Yes.
Caresses him.
And they're so close to each other, at one point, the way that they're looking at each other was they're either going to kiss or punch each other.
Sam and Diane.
Yes.
Sam
And that just made me laugh so much. I think that's my favorite scene.
Yeah, mine was the same as Alice's. Just trying to go down the stairs and then just falling.
So
That is
funny.
hilarious.
I
And the
hated that
noises that it
character,
was
that
making
creature.
dinosaur noises
Yes!
when it's on its back.
That was
How
so
does that
over the
robot
top.
go?
I was thinking the same thing. Did they program that when he's in pain or frustrated to make those noises? I don't think they had that kind of foresight.
No.
Clearly.
No, they don't.
There was a moment in RoboCop 2 that I thought was interesting. The real estate, when he goes to visit the house, I feel like they developed and resolved his family issues poorly.
I completely
Totally
agree.
poorly. But for what it was meant to be, where he goes into the house and the automated real estate agent is giving a tour.
Oh, that's
I just thought it was so over the top futuristic. We can't even in the year 2029 have real people show houses. We have to have little computer stations, kiosks. Yeah,
They probably get mugged.
they might get mugged. So this friendly guy is going to guide you through
swearing
this.
kid is going to take them down.
That's
if they
right.
go to the...
How are they even just selling it? Shouldn't there be squatters in every
There should
room,
be,
right?
yeah, but that one was totally modernized.
About RoboCop's family, I wrote that he pulled a Harry and the Hendersons on his wife.
He did.
Don't you see? We don't want you anymore.
Oh my god!
Oh my god, that scene made me so angry.
Well, that's the whole human versus not human anymore. You're not a man enough for her. That whole thing.
And was that guy dating his wife? The way he was acting,
Right?
I know.
That is bizarre.
That's some weird undercurrent there.
Damn it, RoboCop, you're not human. Now you admit that on camera right now.
And then
Use
all
your
this
free will to tell us that you're not human.
Yeah,
all
exactly.
the silly stuff when they reprogram him and
Oh my god.
there was
okay,
just ridiculous.
My overall problem with the second movie is that there was just so much going on.
Yes.
There were 20 different storylines. They attempted to bring in way too many characters, and nothing gets a full resolution or adequate attention. To me, at one point, I stopped taking notes, and I just wrote, the last 20 to 30 minutes have been a train wreck.
Yes,
That's what I wrote.
That's the whole thing. I mean,
but
the whole time
but
I
it
was
fell apart
watching-
in Act 2.
Yeah,
It did.
for sure.
Yeah. It really
I just kept
did.
asking myself questions. I was like, is that guy really wearing a bolo tie? Does that guy really have a sideways nose ring?
Oh my god.
Is that
The
guy
questions.
really dressed like Vanity? I mean, I just kept asking myself questions like,
Questions like that.
why is that black woman's her cop uniform unbuttoned down to her bra line?
And where did she come
Why?
from?
I know.
And why is she suddenly relevant?
I think my number one
She's the
question
other token
is,
female.
why do people keep shooting at RoboCop with guns when
Yes.
they know
Why?
he's bulletproof?
That is an excellent question.
It's just going to ricochet off and hit one of your buddies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
and this
for
is
sure.
probably a terrible thing to ask, but why is nobody aiming for the
This
I
jawline
know.
of his
Exposed
face,
face.
the only
Yes.
part of his body that looks like it could be
It was not a horrible
damageable.
question.
Well, we all know
It was an
how
efficient question.
villains are really bad shots in
Yes,
movies.
that's true.
So.
Yeah.
And
That's
like
true.
Dr. Fax.
Oh my-
Is her name really Dr. Fax?
Yes, with
Really?
Because
two
they couldn't call her
X's.
Dr. Fox.
That
That would have been too
When
obvious.
she first came on, I was like, "Oh, she might be awesome."
Yep.
No,
Nope. And then
she's
she
not
wasn't.
awesome.
And then she
She's,
was.
terrible.
the exact opposite of awesome.
Yeah.
A drug
And then when
addict,
he-
let me turn him into a robot. That's not a bad
Why
idea.
would that
The
ever
whole
be a good
thing.
idea?
And when RoboCop pulls the spine out of the, pulls
Ew, that was so
Kane's
gross.
spine out of the.
Oh my
It was just
God.
awesome. And there would be all
That
these
whole
instances where it's like,
sequence.
let's have ultra violence and then have something funny.
Yeah.
Ultra violence, have something funny. I just,
Manipulative.
please.
That
No.
second movie just super didn't work.
That should pretty much sum it up. That second movie just super didn't work.
Since we're talking about Miss Fax,
Doctor.
Dr. Fax,
Dr.
Dr.
Miss
Fax.
Dr. Miss Fax. I don't understand. Well, I guess this is to do with her and with everybody else who was running the RoboCop 2 program. Why were they surprised when these robots went insane and committed suicide? Because after we saw the process that they put those semi-alive people through, are we really surprised that they go insane witnessing that? That was the most horrific thing I've seen on screen
Yep.
in a long time.
Pretty disturbing.
And I watched some pretty violent stuff.
And what's the point of even using something with a personality if
I
they just
know.
want to program in the personality?
Exactly.
They didn't
RoboCop
even-
2. I hope you're taking notes
I
if you
know.
plan on doing any reboots of the second RoboCop movie.
They didn't even
Well-
follow their own protocol. They completely changed how they created the
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the whole
RoboCops.
second film is just
Yeah.
such a
It's
train
just
And they're like,
train
oh, it's
wreck.
for public relations.
Yeah, that was my favorite, was the public relations scene.
Oh my gosh.
I did
Do you
like.
think that might be
my
like a lampoon on the like ratings
Yes.
type? I'm just
What do you mean, lampoon on ratings of what?
like when they bring in a film to get rated by like just a bunch of moms and
Oh.
church leaders and like your average Joe and just like people who don't do film really, like they're just like, let's just bring all these people and they can tell us how RoboCop should
I
be.
think that was
Nice.
a direct commentary.
Yeah.
Which would have been more powerful if the movie hadn't sucked,
Yeah.
Indeed.
Wow.
which it did.
Yes, I liked. What was Frank Miller thinking? And that movie is directed by the guy who directed Empire Strikes Back.
Yes. Yes, RoboCop
Which
2
which
was
Cassie's
directed
gonna have
by
to watch.
Irvin Kershner.
Don't take
And
the-
she
please.
totally gave me a look like, oh my god, no.
I did it.
The man
Yes,
that
you
directed
did.
one of my all-time favorite movies and one of potentially the best pieces of cinema directed that pile of crap.
Yeah.
I don't know that I can say that,
Don't-
but many people, especially from my generation and from their generation as
Yeah.
well, apparently Empire is their
movie.
Oh,
favorite
yeah.
Star Wars film.
Yes.
So,
So don't
judge
take this-
it by RoboCop
Yeah.
2,
As
please.
any yeah, don't.
It just
just
it just
forget it
shows
exists.
that Mr. Is it Irvin?
Yeah, Irvin Kershner.
Yeah.
Mr. Irvin is human,
Yes.
and he
he is
makes
imperfect.
he made mistakes
Yeah.
like all of us.
He
So
also
we-
directed Never Say Never Again, which is one of my...
it a Bond movie?
It's a Bond movie,
Yeah.
which is hilarious. It's one where they go to Japan.
Of that, very much of that era. So we have not talked about Nancy Allen as the gum chewing, ass kicking.
As Lewis.
Yes.
I
The best part.
I had a problem with how she was introduced because she walks in super badass. She sees her partner, and he immediately starts to give her semi-sexist sass. And she just puts up with it. And I'm just like, no, rip his balls off.
I will. Her introduction I agree with you. Does need work. Not to mention the fact that she's getting sexist crap. She also gets her partner killed on his first day out.
That was my least favorite thing.
She doesn't even call for backup when they're like going after bad guys. We're just gonna go in. She would never do that. Lewis would never do that. Like,
she had to do that.
Her character.
It's like they made her weak and they made her screw up, which led to her being incapacitated for a period of time, just so they could kill him.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was the laziest part of that.
So wait, does that mean that RoboCop was coolered?
Yes, I guess you could argue
What's
that.
coolered?
It's a comic book analogy where, or you would call it putting a woman in a refrigerator. Some people call it coolered.
Yeah.
Where, who was it? Hal Jordan? Whose girlfriend was it originally? There was a comic book character whose girlfriend was murdered and shoved into a refrigerator. So the term comes from, I think it was Hal Jordan. Yeah. The term comes from the idea that the death of a female character only serves to further the storyline of her male counterpart.
Well, in this case, it wouldn't because he
for himself.
Because he does go on to be his own
you
story.
could argue that because she was incapacitated, she was coolered for that scene because it caused him to be murdered
and
it
therefore happened because she glanced down at a dude's junk.
I know.
And just like, you guys are just mishandling this character left and right.
Yeah, and she is an awesome character.
She becomes
I don't find her that awesome.
I think she's okay.
I think she's okay.
Given the fact that she had to represent all females.
Right? She was the best that
until
we had.
the second. Yeah, she was definitely right.
Until
I mean, all the other examples are really
when you consider that there are lots of cops being killed in Detroit and she's survived. And she just busts into scenes, guns blazing, and she can, like, handle, aside from the opening sequence, she can, like, handle herself as a cop.
And she handled herself in the car, in the car chase. She handled herself, too.
Yeah.
It was
but
just in the warehouse.
Totally mishandles herself in the warehouse. Yeah. But, I mean, I just don't find her that as a strongly written female character. I don't find her that awesome.
I think they were patchy with her.
There were
parts where you'd see her just by herself. By herself, she was great. As soon as you put anybody else on the screen with her, the character fell apart.
It's an interesting thing because she was strongly portrayed. And again, that's because of how the writing was.
Except the parts where she totally fucks up.
Well, but that's portrayal versus writing, right? So she was portrayed as strongly as she could be given the writing. And they didn't, I have to say, the fact that they did not have any sort of romantic situation between her.
That was awesome.
Thank heavens.
God. I was like,
she was a good partner to RoboCop.
She's loyal. Yeah, she's loyal.
She was a good partner.
She was a sidekick, a glorified sidekick.
She kept working with him when all the other cops went on strike. Mm-hmm. She crossed the picket line. She's still doing her job. She's a good cop. Mm-hmm. I like her. And I've got to say, she is. Yeah, I got to say, from the previews of the new RoboCop movie, it looks like they got rid of Lewis, which makes me really angry.
That sucks.
Yeah, like I saw a preview for the new RoboCop recently, and it looks really generic, and it looks like they got rid of Lewis.
Well, is it going to make you madder than Into Darkness or less mad than Into Darkness?
I don't know.
See, the problem is...
let's see if they take her and put her in her underwear unnecessarily. Then we'll see if I get as mad as Into Darkness. Did that happen?
Yeah.
Yes. Are they going to whitewash a black character? Let's see.
Do we even get past the first part of the Bechdel test?
No. That's why
it does not pass.
Wait. The first part is there more than one woman? And yes, there is.
Do
they talk to each other? No.
And a lady getting assaulted.
Well, there's his wife. You do see his wife.
I thought the first part was do two women talk to each other. I thought the first part was do two women talk to each other.
No, is there more than one woman in the
Because,
in the
film?
That's
easy enough to do when you have female characters who all have one line apiece. Then, that's easy.
Oh, my God.
Did they?
What? There's an Officer Jack Lewis in the 2014 movie. So they turned
kidding me?
Lewis into
a guy, into a dude.
He is a man of color. He's black. So that's
gay?
Okay.
Maybe. That would be great.
That would be great.
I can't believe they didn't take the opportunity to make Lewis a strong female character in 2013. Like,
Yeah,
can you imagine how strong that character would have been as a female in 2013? It's easier to get strong female characters. I mean, it's not always seamless, but it's easier. I think
in today's world.
I think it's easier to have a strong
absolutely.
female character.
No, 100% easier.
Yeah, so I can't believe that they went that route of just making it a guy.
That's very disappointing. It's very disappointing to me.
And I like the guy who plays RoboCop. He played this funny character on AMC's show, The Killing.
Yeah.
If you ever get a chance to watch The Killing, he is hilarious as that character.
Although I hear that Killing is not a very hysterical.
The Killing is a very
dark.
It's very dark, but he is the comedic relief.
I can't really do it.
Because he's
I
basically...
couldn't even watch The Wire because I just couldn't. The end of season 1 of The Wire. But anyway,
so
so
on
RoboCop.
their IMDb for 2014, the first 3 listed characters are male characters, and then the first listed female character is Clara Murphy.
You know what that means? You know what that means.
His wife's getting a lot of attention.
Yep.
Whereas she was in, like, a flashback.
In the first one. Yeah, they're totally going to play that up.
Yeah, and in the second one, she's in that scene where basically you get to see her butt turn around right in the center of the screen.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the bedroll, basically,
Isn't
the
there like
cameras
a boob
and
flash too?
I can't remember, but it's
one?
like straight onto the area of interest as she spins on the bed. Like,
is this when he's remembering her again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I totally noticed.
Yeah, pretty much.
How lame.
Indeed.
RoboCop.
The other thing I noticed about the first movie is like every cop car in that movie is a Ford Taurus.
Yes.
What's wrong with that?
I read something
It's
about that.
so 80s. Again, just grounding it in the 80s, man.
Yeah.
That is an 80s movie.
To the
100%. And I hate RoboCop 2's suit. The blue
dead
suit. Like the whole way he walks in the second movie in that stupid blue suit that he wears is just ridiculous. Like he's in, and even Peter Weller, who I think does a good job having to act through the
robot costume.
The costume in the second one just
like
almost
Peter Weller
becomes a caricature of himself in the way that he delivers his line, the way that he walks. I mean, the whole time he's holding his gun, I'm like, how is that even working? It's like he can't even do this with his finger, whatever. It's like ridiculous.
I love the way RoboCop moves. I thought Peter Weller did an amazing
in the first
job.
movie or the second movie?
Even in both.
I think even in the second movie, I almost felt like it was better in the second movie, but I think it's because they improved the costume. Because I know in the first one, Peter Weller was like losing 3 pounds a day from sweating so much because the suit had no ventilation. And
well, that doesn't have to do with mechanics. In the second one, he totally looks like he's doing the robot dance.
But that was one of the things that I wrote down. Is I actually really enjoyed that in the second movie a little bit more than the first. I think it was more apparent in the second movie the way that RoboCop moves like a robot.
When he moved
his head, move his head, and then his body would go. Like,
yeah.
I wrote down RoboCop 2, aka Peter Weller does the robot for 2.5 hours, and it's amazing. And it really is. I like the scene where he like opened a gate and his arms go out and he opened it with the tips of his fingers. RoboCop moves in the most efficient way possible because he's a robot, not a person, and you see that in the acting.
The delivery.
The second movie sucks because I thought that was one of the best parts of the movie.
The delivery of the lines in the second definitely felt caricaturish because it was like played for comedy, especially after he got the 1,000 directives.
Right.
And he was Jolly Blue Giant versus
I think we should talk.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for not smoking.
Yeah.
Please get out
again,
of
for me, it was just that whole, like, everything that worked for me in RoboCop was taken to the extreme in RoboCop True, and became off as ridiculous to me.
Or they completely threw it in the trash.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing about is he human or not? They completely just threw that in the trash with the scene with his family at the beginning.
Yeah, in 2013, I can't be sorry that they threw that away because that issue has been done to death.
Well, it'll be interesting to see because certainly for my generation, and it sounds like for the generation behind me, that this movie it's a classic. It's like a classic film. People love it, and if they,
I do really like the first movie.
I
do really like
came
it.
to a new appreciation of looking at it, having 30 years later, looking at it, for me now. I had a different appreciation for it. At the time it was just like, oh, cool action movie, and now I could see and interpret all of the social and political commentary that was going on, which just went over my head at the time.
Right.
So I definitely
The second movie lacked all of that heart, and it was very difficult for me to even pay attention to the last act.
Me too.
Yeah,
I tried to watch it twice.
I don't even...
4 times. I watched the last act 4 times, and I can't remember anything about the fight scene. I don't really remember how it ends.
Basically, they kill this MFer like 20 times, and he doesn't die.
He doesn't die.
That's basically it.
The one scene that just, again, and about the movement, too, when RoboCop is on the thing above him, and Noonan, the Kane, is in his suit down below, and RoboCop does this ridiculous...
He jumps on it?
Yeah, like, that's a big thing.
You should see Alice acting
Yeah, that'd be great.
It was, I was just like, oh, are you kidding me? I can't. It was just so
and that was
torturous to watch.
After,
Is it like watching Captain Kirk try to do Kung Fu?
Yes. It's worse.
Oh, no.
And that was after the tank. So if the tank didn't kill him, why did he think...
Yeah, I have no idea.
Because they don't understand how weapons work in that world.
It was just... Oh, and
in
all
2029, even though OCP is supposed to be some big weapons
corporation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my drinking game rules, is all of the bad gun handling, because it was torture for me.
Might be a good
drinking game rule.
Yes.
Did I segue well there?
Yes.
Nice job.
So go ahead, Alice. What's the first drinking game
So
rule?
my goal for these drinking game rules is to try and get you as drunk as possible during RoboCop, so that you can tolerate watching RoboCop 2.
That's not a bad idea.
And then you sleep through RoboCop 3.
Right?
And then you drink more during RoboCop 2 to continue to
deaden the pain. Yeah, so it's you've got to take a good slug every time there's some ridiculous weapons handling that happens on screen, which is a lot.
Okay.
What about like the gun flip?
Well, that's a shot.
Okay.
That's a shot.
A shot for the gun flip? The cowboy gun flip?
The cowboy thing, yeah.
Whenever someone dies in the boardroom, take a shot.
Ooh.
And whenever most of the execs fail to respond appropriately, take another shot.
So, shot every single time.
Shot
every single time.
And luckily, it's only like twice per movie, maybe once per movie. Okay.
Take a shot anytime someone says, "I'd buy that for $1."
Oh, that was one of mine too.
There are actually some really great lines in all of these.
Oh, I love that. My friends say it all the time.
I'd buy that for $1.
It
what does
irked
that even
me.
mean?
I know.
Irked.
I say
That'd be crazy.
That's funny.
A sip for every gunshot wound.
Oh my god.
Damn.
So you're going to be drinking a lot.
How can you even count them?
you continuously drink.
Wait, what's the rule?
A sip for every gunshot wound.
Yeah, in RoboCop 2, forget it.
Yeah.
You're just going to be,
You're drinking the whole time.
Dang.
Okay, Alice, got it.
You take a shot for every time Anne Lewis kicks ass.
Okay. She's awesome.
When in RoboCop 2, whenever Dr. Fax uses her feminine wiles on the old man, take a drink.
God. That was so disgusting.
It was just ridiculous.
Her character was all over the map.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
It's one of those they don't know how to handle female character situations.
Okay, so one of mine is take a drink whenever there's one of the commercials.
Okay.
And you're supposed to take a shot when you hear the line, "Pakistan is threatening my border."
That was an interesting commercial,
During the
I have to
Nukem
say.
the board game commercial, because that one was my favorite.
Yeah.
You take a shot in each movie when RoboCop says, "Your move, creep."
Oh, I love that one.
Nice
I
impression.
love how
there.
in that scene, the woman runs up to him and hugs him, and he says something like, "You've experienced a traumatic event. I'll call a local rape crisis center."
And that was like played
That's the
unintentionally.
response.
It totally is, but it was like her look at him, her response was played for unintentional comedy.
Yeah.
Because I like actually laughed. I was like,
I
oh my
felt bad for laughing, but I was just
Me
like, oh my god.
I felt horrible for laughing. But
Appropriate response, RoboCop. Film director, what were you doing?
like, I don't know.
Can I just say also, shooting rapists in the dick is totally fine with me.
Oh yeah, that was great.
Good
Shot
job,
when the rapist
RoboCop.
gets shot in the dick.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Well, in this case, it was intended rapist.
Yes. Yes.
So
I love how she's so legal about it.
just, so two-parter for you. You have to take a shot every time you think one of the following two things. I could have delivered that one-liner better.
Nice.
Or I could have written that one-liner better.
Nice. You take a shot?
Yeah, either one.
Whenever you legitimately say, what the fuck, to a weakness in the plot, everyone in the room must take a drink. So, Act 2 of RoboCop 2. You're screwed.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and it, you know.
You're gonna need it.
You're gonna need it.
Okay, so during RoboCop 2, this is at the beginning. This is actually when I still thought I might enjoy this movie. There's the scene where a guy is holding the kid as a hostage and says, "If you do anything, I'm going to shoot this kid."
Ugh.
Take a shot when RoboCop says, "We can't have that," and shoots the guy in the head.
Yeah. And
Yes, with the ricochet.
Ricochets the bullet.
Ricochets the bullet.
With his partner standing like right there.
Yep.
But she was perfect because she caught the baby.
Yes,
Yeah,
of course.
and
Of
Lewis
course.
is awesome.
Which is an appropriate thing for a woman to do. is to
Oh,
catch
God.
catch
You
the
ruined it.
Sorry. Sorry.
I say take a drink every time one of his prime directives shows up on the screen. So if multiple prime directives show up, you take a drink for each one that shows up.
Shows up.
That's
All
right.
Man, you would be drinking a lot during the second movie.
Yeah,
Like,
Exactly.
over
Which is
900.
needed.
Which is needed, yeah. Check your liver after this movie. Somehow.
So I've taken a shot every time a bit of comedy follows extreme violence.
That's a good one.
And I had an earlier one, which kind of plays into something you said earlier about the gunshot wounds. Whenever someone dies in a ridiculous hail of bullets, take a drink. Like the kind where it was like, and it's just like guts. And yeah, it's like just
Yeah.
outrageous.
That
Outrageous
boardroom
fiction.
murder with from the robot, the pre-robot
Yes.
was pretty,
Yes.
was pretty graphic.
I was like, is this what the movie's going to be the whole time? Yes.
Yes. Following in that vein, actually, you should take the you should gauge this yourself. Take a shot or a drink that accurately captures your level of disgust with the current violence taking place on screen. So, for example, during that boardroom scene, I might take a nice long drink. During the scene where they're turning Kane into RoboCop 2, probably take about 5 shots. So, use your brain for that.
Especially when he's watching them.
That was the worst.
With his brain
part. When
and
they're
spinal
holding his head,
spinal column.
Oh my God.
Are we
I was
really
kinda
surprised they go insane? Seriously.
Ugh.
I say take a sip each time a paramedic sounds super disinterested. Like the whole time Murphy was being worked on, there was like, well, call it. Let's try to do it. Meh.
I
Like
will
the
say,
whole time, I'd be sipping the whole time.
I will say though,
Get me through it.
I did think that ER scene in the first one
Was
was really realistic because when you growing up with a parent that worked in the emergency room, unfortunately that stuff does become routine.
I've seen it portrayed like that before, where they just have the doctors like completely just doing their thing, shooting the shit, talking about all sorts of stuff, and it is disturbing from a non-medical point of view.
It's unfortunate, but I do think it's slightly accurate. In
I
cases.
was
Yeah.
trained as an EMT twice. You have to compartmentalize because
Yeah.
otherwise
It's hard.
it's hard, which is why
very
I'm
hard.
not an EMT now. 'Cause
Yeah.
It was too hard for me.
You're like, excuse me, we're not going to talk about your golfing rounds that you just did. Sorry.
Yeah. Any other drinking?
I'm done.
I'm good. I'm good. The only other one I had, which just plays into what we've said the entire time, was that when you're watching Robo 2, every time you think, well, that worked in RoboCop, but not now. That was the only
Completely
other one I had.
different curve.
I just
Yes.
say my drinking rule is right when you're about to start RoboCop 2, you don't. You take 2 shots and you go to the local bar instead.
Or watch something else.
I think
watch
that's the
something
most
else.
useful.
That
Or
is-
watch Terminator 2 instead.
Terminator 2.
Yeah,
there you
watch
go.
Terminator 2 instead.
You
That's a good
won't
one.
go wrong.
Oh.
Thank you for joining us today. This has been Bree.
Alice.
Cassie.
And Megan.
And you can find us at educatinggeeks.com, #educatinggeeks. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and yes, even Google+. We hope that you'll join us for our next episode where we'll be educating me on Sherlock.
Yay! Bye.
Bye.